Hey everyone, welcome back, and we're going to continue with the negotiate for advantage today. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody can see the screen clearly and hear me. So if you could just press the hand button, that'll be great. It'll just confirm that everything is working. Okay, good, great. Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, John. If have you guys got any questions at all that you would want to ask from the previous class, or anything, or do I just continue with this? Okay, so we're gonna continue with the class today. So last week we covered the negotiation, how we negotiate, and all the things that we gotta be careful of. And I would recommend that if you get a chance, go back through the video, watch the video again, watch the video with the PDF that I sent you for with the mind maps open, so you can understand and understand and comprehend the material much better. So, and also it would be a good idea if whenever you guys are planning to make an offer or negotiate or do something that involves a bit of negotiation, I would really want you to go through some of the mind maps and see if you can put some. You can print them out anytime you want and handwrite some notes for yourself. And it's a good practice, and all you have to do is maybe do it 3 or 4 times for the first 3 or 4 times, and after that it'll just become a second habit. It'll become like a second nature for everybody. So anytime you see a developer, you're about to make an offer, you'll go through these things, you'll go through the template, and then you would instantly load, this is what you need to do to move ahead. So now today we're going to talk about levers. I like to call them levers because those are the different things that I've got in my hand. So if that doesn't work, I'll pull this one. If this doesn't work, I'll pull this one. If I ask for something else and I don't get it, then I can try something else, and so on. So what we have to remember is that the price is just as important as the terms that we get. And the reason is, always remember that up until you've got a DA on the side or the planning permit on the side, that side is of no use to you. So holding a site and paying monthly interest on that adds to the holding cost of this. Now what we want to essentially do is actually control the site without actually paying for it. So, and the way you do that is if you can sign a contract with a longer settlement, or you can sign an option agreement, so that you can go and get the plans and permit and everything, and you don't have to settle for it, you don't have to get the money for it. And if you play your cards right, you can get to a point where you've got the DA even before it's time to settle, and you can actually put the property back on the market with your margin if you don't want to sell it. So it's all about adding value to the site. And if you do want to go ahead all the way and develop the site, the better option is always to delay the settlement as much as possible, so you can gain as much ground as possible without actually spending a lot of money. So a normal DA on a 4 townhouse development site or something will not cost you more than 30,000-40,000 maximum, which would include all the other consultant reports. It would include traffic management and all of that. So you're essentially controlling a site. So if you, let's say for example, you manage to get the site for an 18-month settlement or a 14-month settlement, you know that you can go into the council, get the DA, come back out and put it back on the market for selling, and it can be done. But just be careful that if you that's called flipping. So if you, even before, if you've got the DA and everything, just make sure that your settlement contract price is lower than your DA price. and it's got to be significantly lower, because let's say you bought a site for $1 million and then you wanted to flick it out for 1.2. That would work, because you will then have to pay stamp duty on $1 million, and the person who actually buys it at 1.2 pays stamp duty on 1.2. However, if you only got like a $50,000 uplift and you sold it to somebody for $1,050,000, what good would that do? Because you only made $50,000 on it, and you maybe spend $40,000 on getting the plans and permit done for that, and in that scenario you might be under. So like, instead of actually making anything, you'll be out of pocket, because not only did you go out and spend the money to get the plans and permit, but then you got to pay stamp duty on the price that you negotiated for. So make sure that when you do something like that, the uplift is above the land value plus the cost that you the expenses that you were out of pocket to get the plans and permit, plus the stamp duty. So if it's way above that, that's when you make money. Otherwise, you'll end up actually not making money. In fact, you'll end up actually losing money, because you still have to pay stamp duty. Now, even if you bought something for $1 million and sold it for 1.1, you still have to pay stamp duty on $1 million. So be careful of that. Now, so what are the terms that we can negotiate? So we can negotiate how much deposit we're going to pay. It could be 5%, could be 10%, could be a fixed amount. There is no such rule that it has to be 5 or 10%. You could offer to pay just a $50,000 deposit, and that's pretty much it. And you can negotiate that with the vendor. So it is up to you. Another good candy for longer settlement is deposit release. So in Victoria, they have a Form 27. And what it is if you fill that form out, it goes via your solicitor. And what they do is then whatever deposit that you've given to the vendor, until the time that you settle, that deposit can then be released to the vendor immediately. If you ever do that, make sure you file a caveat on the property, because you've just released money against the property, and if you, for whatever reason, if you default or whatever, you'll never get that money. So you need to make sure that you do settle on it, and your solicitor will advise this to you, that if you're releasing money against Form 27, always make sure that you get file a caveat on the property, so that way the vendor can't go out and sell it to somebody else or get a mortgage against it or do something with it. So that's important. You can also negotiate that you're going to release the deposit in stages. So for a longer settlement, you could say, look, I'm going to give you $200,000 deposit, and I'm going to release $50,000 to you now, and then in 6 months time I'll release another $50,000, and then in another 6 months time I'll release another $100,000. And that way the vendor is actually getting some form of payment throughout the longer settlement period where they have to wait. You can put in all sorts of terms subject to due diligence, subject to a certain report that you're after. But usually what happens is anytime you try and put a settlement contingent on a satisfactory report, the solicitor will come in and say that it can't be related to a report. They will still ask you to put a deadline, so it can be after a certain time period. So sorry, this is related to the due diligence. So it can be subject to due diligence, it can be subject to a whole lot of different things that are related to the site. You could say subject to soil report by X date, or subject to CHMP, which is the Cultural Heritage Management Plan report, by X date. You could negotiate access to site, so that could mean that you could go on the site, do your plans, permits. You could say that the vendor will comply with and you can fill in the blanks. So for example, the vendor's got to consent to applying for consent to you applying on their behalf to the council. So you can because you got to go and apply for the planning, you have to pay the fees and everything. So there are fees associated with you putting in an application with the council, but the vendor needs to consent to it because the application still goes into their name. And if you don't settle, is their side and the permit comes in and is their permit, you've actually just lost the cost of the permit. So all that you could negotiate that you'll be allowed to do advertising. So if you wanted to put a board out outside the site, you can. But if you got to put in these terms and everything. So always remember that if you are agreeing to their price, if it's their price, then you can negotiate your terms. And if you are negotiating on their terms where they say, I must get 15% deposit or something, and you say, okay, look, great, you want 50% deposit, I can give you X amount now, X amount later, or I can only do that, or I need a longer settlement. Usually longer settlement and the deposit, these are the two main things that come in, and your due diligence period that will come in, that's going to form a lever that you can use to negotiate terms with your vendor. So always remember that these are different levers that you've got to play with. So anytime you get this, you are in a negotiation with the vendor, and it'll always be and more projects that you do, you'll find that you'll have a middleman with that. So again, with the payment as well, I'll get into the concessions because that's a complete section in its own. So I'll get into that. But the other thing is the payment and the settlement. So how do you manage the payment and the settlement? Again, the payment could be in cash or cash plus unit. Elaine called me this week, and he had a inquiry regarding negotiating with the landowner where the vendor actually wants to keep a unit. So let's say the unit that they want to keep is $1 million, but the value of the land that they are selling is 1.7 million. So you can negotiate and say, look, I'll give you some cash now, and you get a unit worth X amount at a later date, and you can give them a contract that says that they don't have to pay anything, but they settle on a $1.1 million unit, but they still have to pay the stamp duty on it, and which again then can be adjusted in the price that you're trying to negotiate with them. You can also negotiate a cash plus a vendor finance deal with them, where you say, look, I'll give you 50% cash, the rest you vendor finance. So whatever the price is, you get 5% interest rate on the remaining amount that needs to come back to you guys. So there are different ways to structure a deal, and we'll get into this in a lot more detail when we do the no money down deal section, because it just depends upon how you structure it. Then you got vendor finance, which is extra cash for the vendor. So let's say if you go to the bank, you'll have to pay the broker, you might have to pay the application fee, you might have to pay the setup costs for the finance, and then your effective interest rate is about 7%, let's say. But if you offer that 7% to the vendor, you've just saved all this hassle of going and looking for finance. So, but then what the deal is going to be with that has to be structured, and a loan agreement has to be put in place. All those things have to be put in place so that you can actually settle on the land and use the equity in the land. And we'll discuss that in more detail when we do the no money down deal section. Or you can do a property swap where they've got a land, for example, for $1 million, and you might have another development. And the reason I put that in is because we were trying to negotiate this with a vendor, because they wanted to sell and buy a unit, and we had these units right next to the beach for 950,000, and they wanted to sell it for 1.2. Their land, we wanted to buy that 1.2, but we said, look, if you're looking for a new place, we could give you that unit, and we could swap it with you. And you can do that, but they still have to pay stamp duty. You'll still have to pay the GST when you do the sale and all of that, but that comes from your pocket. But it can be swapped. The solicitor can structure it in a way so that you know, okay, we are buying this, but instead of paying them X amount, they're gonna get that unit. So all that can be offset. So I'll buy your property, you buy my properties, that kind of thing, and you adjust the value. But there's no way around any stamp duty saving, or there's no way around any GST saving in this scenario, because the way it's structured, you can never get out of this. If you try and save something, you'll be hit with another thing. So it's pretty clever the way it's being it has been structured. So ATO is not stupid. They know what they're doing, and they make sure that nobody gets away without paying tax. So yeah, okay. So concessions are minor little things that you give away to get the bigger deal. And always remember that it's the minor things that you let go of to get the bigger deal, not the other way around. You don't give away bigger things for minor concessions. So it's not like you pay $50,000 more for only 2 months extra settlement time. So always remember that. So more concessions that you will give, the more both parties will feel they've got something out of the negotiation. So even if you list the things that you can give away, and there can be many things, and I'll give you some examples in a second. But the more you list them and more you show them that this is what I've given you, hey, if they don't acknowledge the concession that you've given, your concession's gonna lose its value in an instant. Like, it'll be just gone. So always remember, there's a big part of needs and desires, and you gotta learn to trade these needs and wants with what they want to do, how soon they want the money, if they want you to move their house, if they want to keep the appliances that they've installed in their house when they sell it. These are just minor concessions that you can say, look, they're no good to you anyway, but to them they might have a lot more value than they have to you. I'll give you an example. We wanted to negotiate a longer settlement. The vendor wouldn't give it, but the vendor had actually recently renovated their property, so they were very attached to the new appliances. And he kept asking $50,000 more for the new renovation that they had paid for. And I said, look, that means nothing to us because we're going to demolish it. So we said to them that, you've got X amount of days, go in, get your stuff out before the settlement happens. And they did. And we basically traded that option to be able to get like an 8-month settlement on that property. So that's what the concessions are. But there are certain rules to giving concessions. So avoid giving concessions. Instead, you got to trade them. So don't give it to them and get nothing in return for them. So when you offer a concession to the other party, you nearly always want to ask them for a concession in return. Always do that. Suggest conditional concessions versus giving them. So you could say, I might be willing to give you A if you were to give me B. So I'd use this line all the time, which is, I'm not sure if I can pay you X dollars extra for the land. If you would be willing to agree on a longer settlement, I would have to discuss with my partners and run some numbers again. Would you consider a 12-month settlement, and you get the deposit released to you now and we settle in September next year? So you can negotiate and structure things and say things like this, where anytime they say they want X for this, you say, okay, obviously you've done your numbers and everything, so you know that your numbers are working in the background. But you say, look, I'm happy to give you this, or I'll give you that. However, I'll have to do my numbers again to see whether or not it works. And if you can consider a 12-month settlement, I'm happy to trade extra 50,000 or something on a longer settlement. But then again, if I'm giving somebody extra 50,000, I have to make sure that I could have an issue with cash flow. I'll give you an example. We have this issue where we need to make sure that every year we've got at least 2 to 3 projects coming out of council. If I do not have minimum 2 to 3 projects coming out of council every year, I'm going to be in trouble because my rotation of cash is going to stop. And in order for me to be able to prove to the bank that, look, I make my money from development, I always have to show them that these are the projects that are finishing, these are the projects that are in council, and these are the projects expected to start construction next year. And I've got to make a full plan and give them feasibilities and show them contracts that these projects are in the pipeline. If I for 1 year, if I fail to show that I've got something in pipeline, I'm going to have issues with my serviceability, and that's how stringent the banks are at this stage. So if they say that, okay, you want to claim your income as a developer, they want to see what's coming in the pipeline. So before somebody says, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, you need to make sure that you can show them that, okay, the profit came in from this development, then went into this development, and then this development was complete. And then you can show them that I've signed contracts and these are the feasibilities, even if those contracts are subject to certain things. But if you can show them this is what's coming on, then the banks, even the top banks, will consider your income as a developer. So what we try and do is, because my cash is tied up in developments right now, so I might not have the deposit, or I might not have I might not have the money right now to get into a project. But I can't let a really good project go by because I haven't got the money. So what we try and do is get at least 12 to 14 months, or if not 18 months settlements, and we say we're not even give you the deposit. We sign the contract now, here maybe 5 grand or 10 grand deposit that we release to you, but we are paying $40,000 or $50,000 above the market. What that is helping me to do is that I already know that I've got 2 or 3 projects finishing at what date. That's when my cash is going to be free. And if I can control the site and line it up so that I can do it next year or in a year and a half or so, then I've got projects lined up for next year. And they're already locked in, so I know that these projects will come on the market and we're going to make minimum X amount of money from this project. So all those things you got to consider. So for that, I don't mind paying $40,000 or $50,000, paying $50,000 above the market, because I haven't got the money to pay them. But if they agree for a 12-month settlement or an 18-month settlement, I know that I've just postponed the upfront cash layout because my cash is tied up in a current project at the moment. So as a developer, you'll see the most challenging part of being a developer is managing your cash flow, so that when you're if you haven't got the cash flow, and it's got to rotate, it's got to keep rotating. And also another thing that I do, I'm sorry I'm going a little bit off topic, but another thing that we do is when we get a contract where we are selling something, I don't worry about getting extra 10 grand or extra 20 grand when I'm selling my units. I absolutely do not worry, even if my feasibility was based on 700k a unit and I got an offer for 680. At that stage, all I'm looking for is to turn over the project and move on, because I'm not going to be doing that one project for the rest of my life. I've got to turn it over and move on to the next project. And that 20k is not going to bother me, because I need to free up my cash and get into the next one because I've got a settlement coming up. So in that scenario, we just look at all these different factors when we are making that decision. If we have the time, so let's say we start with the pre-sale and we've got the time, then we dig our heels. So that's the price, take it or leave it. Otherwise, we won't sell it. So unless we are desperate, but at the same time, if we've got an offer and I know that, okay, 680 today, $20,000, I may or may not get that unconditional offer 4 weeks from now, I usually accept that offer and I keep moving. So start with the highest priority concession first, because, and that's usually the one that the party mentions at the very beginning. So they might say minimum X amount of price or whatever. So if you give them the price that they are looking for, you might be able to get a better concession. Never accept a concession that is worth less than the one you are offering. So that you've got to weigh up whether the concession that you are offering, and you can't just measure the value of your concession in terms of the money, in terms of the actual dollar cost. You also have to look at convenience, cash flow, and the future benefit of the concession that you're going to give. So if you wanted to give a dollar value to it, you could say my holding cost would be X amount of dollars and I'll have to do this, that. But if I get a 12-month settlement, then I don't have to worry about it now. So that's my convenience right now. The other issue that I might have is that I might be tight on cash flow right now, but in 12 months time, I know that my projects are coming up. So I can't. So when I say I'll give you $40,000 more for your land or $50,000 more for your land, I'm not doing a dollar value comparison only. I'm also looking at convenience and my cash flow and the dollar value. So I could say, look, I might be able to, if I go to the bank and in the bank I've paid, let's say I paid, my holding cost for that period could be $60,000 for 12 months. I could weigh that out and say, look, okay, on $1 million side, 6% interest, if it's commercial, if it's 5% or 4.9, whatever, it's $45,000 anyway on $1 million side for 12 months. But that means that I have to go to the bank and prove my serviceability now, and my serviceability right now could already be used up in a project that I'm doing. So the bank might not lend me anything right now anyway. So you have to look at all these things, whether it's dollar value, whether it's convenience, and whether it's your cash flow. So all three things. So I'll just put that in there. Just put it here and later add it on, dollar value. So you've got to compare them amongst the dollar value, convenience, and cash flow. So concessions lose value as soon as you make them. So for example, it could be where you say, okay, I'll let you pull your appliances out from the newly renovated kitchen that you put in. Or it could be, we'll help you relocate, or we'll pay your lawyer expenses. Or I'll pick up the bill for your contract of sale. So say in so many off-market sites, vendors do not have a contract of sale or a disclosure statement or a section 32 ready with them. So if you want that site and they sort of agree to it and they can stay in the site for a year or so and you give them a good value, you might want to give them this added bonus of, I'll pick up your solicitor's bill or I'll pick up your conveyancer's bill. Costs you very little, but it's a convenience and it's a concession that you've given away to get the vendor to agree to your terms. So remember that. Now, use giveaway concessions to your advantage. It could be tree removal, pick up a legal bill. You could also offer to pay their remaining outstanding, council rates. Most old properties that you got, they would always have something that's owed to the council. And it can be the moment you get the disclosure statement or your section 32, it's usually in there where it says that this property owes $3,000 to Southeast Water. This property owes X amount of dollars to the Kingston City Council, for example. And the moment you see that, you should go, look, this is something I can pick up and use to my advantage for that. And they might not even notice it. They might just think that, okay, when you pay me the money, I'll pay the council. And it happens because when the settlement happens, the solicitors, all the conveyancers and the solicitor, they get together and they say, look, who's owed money from this property? So when the new money is coming in, the new money is then used to pay off the council bills or the Southeast Water bills. And then whatever is remaining goes to to the vendor. So the vendor is thinking, I sold it for $1 million, but then I've got to pay $5,000 to the council for the rates. It's just small money. It's $5,000. I might have to pay $2,500 to my solicitor, and then another $1,000 to my land tax office or the state revenue office. And you might throw in and say, look, if you agree to this, I will give you X amount of money, and I'll pick up your solicitor's bill, and I'll pick up your council rates, and I'll pick up your land tax, depending upon what they are, just to be able to sway them to your to what you are asking from them. So you could offer to pay them, and these are those little concessions that you can give away. Relocation cost. They can sell or move their house. So in most cases, you'll see that. And it's very common in Queensland, especially, where people can actually sell the house. The house removalists, people who specialize in that, they come in, they break the house, like they strategically split the house in few sections, and they take up the house and take it somewhere else, and they buy it. And in that scenario, it's actually good for you, because if you help them relocate or whatever, because then there's less demolition costs for you. So those are the things that you need to be aware of. And they can take away their appliances, especially if newly renovated. So these are the things that I haven't actually pulled up from just by thinking about them. I've actually used them in my negotiations. I paid relocation costs. I picked up land tax and council rates. I picked up legal bills to do deals with vendors. I've offered to move their house, and I've offered to give them their appliances. So these are the things that I've myself. There could be n number of other things that I haven't listed them here because I haven't come across them, but you may come across them. But I'm making you aware so that your line of thought is on what are these little expenses that they have to incur. And if you list them down, you can use them to your advantage and negotiate with them. Okay, point out and remind them of the value of your concession. Very, very important. If you give them a concession and they don't even notice your concession, you basically fired a bullet and it didn't hit anything. So you've got to make sure that every concession that you give out is highlighted, is communicated to them in the best possible way, because if they don't see that you've given them anything, basically that concession hasn't worked, and you're not going to get anything in return. So you can't give away these things without actually making them aware that you're giving that away. So always express gratitude for the other party's concessions. Even a simple thank you, I appreciate that, can encourage them to continue the beneficial behavior. So if you say, look, I really appreciate you agreeing on 8 months or whatever, or letting us apply for this, whatever. So just keep saying that. The more you say, it's like you've set a benchmark for them, and now they've got to agree. They've got to keep meeting that benchmark. It's just like it's a psychological thing. So be careful. Just remember that. Always ask for a final concession. So if the other party realizes that every time you ask for something, he asks for something, he will need to give up something. He will eventually shy away from asking for more than what. Actually, I don't know what happened here. Like, it should be they, and I'll change that. They will need to give up something, and they will naturally shy away from asking for more than they. So it's basically you're telling them anytime they ask for something more, you've got to ask for something in return. So after a while, they'll understand that every time they ask for a raise or something, you might have even more favorable conditions for yourself. Right now, I'm negotiating with not five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm negotiating with 7 different landowners, and if fingers crossed this deal goes through, I'll reveal the deal to you if it goes through. And every time we negotiate with them, we've already paying them above the market, but I'm negotiating an option, like a 24-month option with another option to renew it for 12 months. So basically, I'll have a call option for almost 3 years, and if I don't want to settle towards the end of it, I can pull the pin and not settle. The only thing is that I won't be sitting on it. I'll be spending at least $400,000 to $500,000 on the site to get the permits and get all the other things happening for the site. So the idea is to be able to put something in pipeline which is massive, and it can be done. And if not, I have 3 years to actually get the DA. And if I can't afford it, I can flick the site. I still got time to flick the site. So that's what this is. So I can't tell you what it is unless it comes good, but I am trying for it. So now, holdback concession that can be given to other party at the end of negotiation to reinforce good faith and to encourage the other party to walk away feeling as if they got the better end of the deal. So you always have to remember that usually it could be a non-financial concession. It could be you telling them that you've got a dilapidated property on your thing, and or it could be, for example, I'm negotiating with somebody who's got who has so much rubbish on the site that they're probably going to get a notice from the council to get rid of it. Now, if I offer that, don't worry about it, we'll get rid of it for you. That's a non-financial concession. I mean, it has a cost to me, but it's a small thing for me to give away. So, like for example, if you're selling units, you could offer if a buyer comes in, and in most cases you will see now that it's a buyer market, even when they come to buy your units with what you've developed, they might say, look, I'll buy this for X amount or whatever. And if they come back with a counter, your list price is $650. They say, look, I can only afford to give you $630. You could say, look, I'll throw in the blinds for you. And the blinds on a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom unit, maximum they cost you maybe about $2,000 or $2,200 or something. And you've just given them a $2,200 concession that I'll give you the blinds and the fly screens, for example, but I'll stick to my price. So those are the things you gotta remember and keep in mind and keep up your sleeve, so you can give out these concessions and you give them out in the best possible way. Okay, so the next one is develop response to all possible scenarios. You've got to have a comeback for everything that happens. So if X happened, what are you gonna do? If they don't agree on a price, what you're gonna do? Because that, if you've done the exercise properly, and the first one where we discussed the mechanics, where it was what's your minimum acceptable offer, what's your area of agreement, what's your target point. If you've done these exercises properly, you would know the point where you can actually walk away from it. So your comeback could be as good as simple as saying, sorry mate, I don't negotiate beyond this point because I've got to make money on the deal, and you walk away. So you've got to pre-plan your best offer and your second best offer. So make sure that whatever your best offer is, whatever your second best offer is, is there. So start with the second best offer and let it simmer with the other party for a while. So you could start with your second best offer, which is basically your, if we look at the mechanics, this is your minimum acceptable offer. Minimum acceptable offer is your lowest offer basically that you're gonna give. So you start with a little bit like a second best offer, so you can get a little bit more, and then you let it simmer through, and let it sit there for a while. So don't expect. So if you keep calling the agent or if you keep calling the vendor, saying, "What do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" You're just basically telling them that you are desperate, and they're never going to come down with their price. So. So use another decision maker as leverage. Always say you need to discuss this with your business partner first, or your wife first, or your friend, or your brother, or your uncle, or your auntie, or whoever. Just have somebody else who's behind you, even if no one's behind you. This is your way of saying, "Look, I need to discuss it with somebody else." Before we make a decision and everything. So never, even if you want to accept a price or something, give it some time. Even if you give it 2 hours and you say, "Look, good, great, give me a couple of hours, I need to see," and then call them a little bit later with your offer, rather than jumping on it even if you've accepted it. So if nothing works out, find out if they would allow an option on the land. You could have different terms for your call option, settlement time, be able to comply, and or nomination form. These are just different things. So this is double stamp duty. I've already discussed that in the previous section. And all other negotiable terms could be STCA, subject to council approval. And once upon a time, it was easier to sign a deal and say, "Look, settlement 6 months after council approval or subject to council approval." But these days it's getting difficult because no one's actually going to give you control over their side without an actual date in the mind. So it's usually better to have a date rather than subject to a permit. So the moment you put something subject to council approval, it could be, but it'll come with a date with it. By let's say 18 months, if you don't get a permit, you go unconditional, or if you get a permit, then you gotta settle in 90 days after getting the permit, or whichever comes earlier. But there'll be a date in there. Subject to finance, subject to due diligence. If it's a commercial property, subject to vendor providing a tax invoice, access to site. These are just different negotiating terms. And your comeback for these situations is basically coming back with another concession. So what do you do in a hot market? Now, thankfully, right now is not a hot market because the banks have tightened the finance. And that's why it's better to come together. I mean, I was talking to another developer that we bought a site off. He made $500,000 last year on a development. He's got $500,000 sitting in there, but banks are knocking back his loans because he can't prove a continuity. So he can't say that I've got something in pipeline or whatever. And that is why he wants to do a project with us, so that if we paid the land out, there is nobody else who can stop you from your development. And that is why I've been asking all of you to come together, or most of you to come together and do a project together. Because if you end up paying the land out completely, you got no issue. You got no problem whatsoever. But having said that, even if you, amongst all of you, you have 1.2 million or 1.4 million or 5 million or whatever, you still don't want to pay that money. You want to delay the settlement as far out as possible. You got to have as long a settlement as possible. And when you are ready and when it's time for you to settle, then you pull up your money, then you settle, go get your pre-sales, and it's a walk in the park after that, because no one's going to ask you whether or not you can do that, because the land's already paid out. you'll be required to come up with less number of pre-sales because there's already equity in the land, so you're not borrowed any money on the land. So on a 4 townhouse development, you might get away by having just 2 pre-sales because your land's already paid out. So long as the debt would cover the construction loan. And once that happens, it's just a matter of time. It gets so easy from that point that it's just turn over the development, sell, build, settle, matters finished. The job's done. And all of you walk away with making at least 30-40% return on equity. So, but in a hot market, you got to be a lot more prepared. You got to have your finance ready. You got to do your due diligence prior, so you can go on conditional with confidence without the subject to due diligence clause. And a lot of big project marketers, I don't want to say any names, but big project marketers who are everywhere, they would not even accept an offer subject to due diligence. So if they list a site, and that is why I usually do not try and get sites where they're basically trying to bulldoze you into a development, and you got to pick your battle. You just tell them, sorry, I'm not the guy you want to, I just never do. So we never go to auction. Like, we might go there, but we never bid in an auction ever, because we just do not want to be under, we don't want to make a decision in pressure. So if the site doesn't work, or if it goes into an auction and the vendor insists on going into an auction, then you know that you can't make a deal there. But if you keep trying this with an open mind, you will be surprised how many vendors want to make a deal outside of the agent, outside of all of this, because you just have to find the right ones. So find out what you could fit on the land before you do your due diligence. Find out what can be done with it. Have your financial structures ready. You're trying to make your offer look better than everyone else. So in a hot market, you got to make sure that your offer looks better than everybody else's. It could mean shorter settlement. It could mean you know what you're doing, and it's more preparation required in a hot market. And I remember in a hot market, we bought a few projects and everything, and but we actually turned down a lot of projects as well. We missed out on a lot of projects as well because it was a hot market. People didn't want to. We didn't want to pay that much. Always have your residual value of land or the project related site value always calculated in that, because even if you think that you can go into an auction, let's say 4 of you got together and all of you had money ready to settle on an auction or something, and you know the site's good, but you would still have like a maximum amount that you want to pay for the site, and you can determine that by making sure that your numbers are right and your development potential is right. Okay, now these are your comebacks, and we are going to, hang on one second, let me just go like that. Okay, now these are your comebacks if you come across people who negotiate with you. Now these could happen with a lot of landowners or vendors, but in most cases you're gonna find yourself using these when you are trying to sell your own units, and you'll find that agents and everybody else comes to you and they will pressure you to accept the offer, which is a lowball offer, or which is something that you don't want to accept. So always dig your heels in, and that is why that whole process of due diligence, where you know that you are in a good place, and you know how you'll find out that you are in a good area. You won't see a lot of properties that stay on the market. So let's say now I'm more aware of all the different suburbs here in Melbourne, so I'm going to give an example of Mordialloc, for example. Now imagine Can you imagine anybody, the people who are familiar with Melbourne will find out, what Mordialloc is. Now, can you imagine if a good location site in Mordialloc and you've got a 3-bedroom townhouse, how long do you reckon it's going to stay on the market? Or you built it and it never sold. Do you think that can ever happen in a place like Mordialloc? And that is why that first steps of finding the site and making sure that the site's really good or the location's really good, you're already mitigating that option. So even if you dig your heels, you know that sooner or later you're going to find somebody who's going to take it. So how soon, depends on your ability to be able to hold a project when it's time for settlement, or when you're trying to get your pre-sales and so on. Okay. So if you find somebody bulldozing you with negotiations, these are your comebacks in kind of it. These are your defense and your counter tactics. So first thing is, you can slow down the process yourself. You can buy more time. You can be as slow as possible as you can be. Talk less and listen more. So don't open your mouth too much. Let them talk. Let them just keep taking your notes, and then say, look, I'll have to get back to you and consider everything that you are saying. I'll get back to you. So the first thing you can do is slow down the process. So that is, you're trying to break that momentum with them. Rejecting lowball offers. Now, when you are trying to sell your units and somebody comes in, you listed your units at 650 and somebody comes in with a 590 offer. There's no sale, But if you reject it outright, you say, "Oh, please don't waste my time." You've basically given up that opportunity to reel them into the game. You know what I mean? So instead of just saying, "No, sorry, can't take it," instead of saying that, you counter them with another offer, and you can say something like, you'll have to do better than that. And when you say you'll have to do better than that, it keeps them in the game, it keeps you in the game, and the door's not shut down. So even when somebody gives you a ridiculous offer, you don't just say, "No, sorry," You always say you'll have to do better than that. What that tells them is that, oh shit, what else can I do? What else can I do? If they can't do any better than that, you already know that you're not going to sell it for that price. But if you say you have to do better than that, instead of losing a prospective buyer, you've kept the conversation going. So always make sure that you don't just say an outright no, you keep them in the game. Defending against the nibble. So nibble is basically, once you've negotiated everything, you come back again for a little bit more discount. And you'll find that most buyers will do that because they'll try and come back to you, get free fly screen, free air conditioning, free upgrade to blinds, or free carpet, or something or the other. So instead of that, you just say, they come in and they try and slowly drain your concessions. So, and you can do the same. You can go back to them, but in most scenarios as a developer, in a lot of scenarios it would work. So if you're negotiating your wages with your boss, you could do the same thing. Go back and say, "Look, can I get a new laptop?" or something like that. But I've just put all of this together from the perspective of negotiating either as a buyer or a seller. So if you you'll find that you'll have to they'll be coming back to you for this because there's not a lot for us as developers to nibble when we are buying a site. In fact, we will list all the concessions to give away and let them nibble so that we can get the bigger deal and give away the little concessions. But when you're selling your units, when you've developed all of them, it'll be them, they'll be coming back to for nibbling. It's also known as nickel and diming. And it's an example is, I'm purchasing this 600,000 house from you. The least you can do is spend 2,500 to replace the windows for me, or put blinds in for me. And you should respond with, you shouldn't assume that I'm going to give away anything for free. So if they come back and they say, look, throw in that, reply with that you shouldn't assume that I'll be giving you free blinds upgrade or whatever. So it just tells them that nibbling is not going to work. Defending against shot in the dark. So shot in the dark, I call it SID, are questions that one party will ask in order to gain clues about the other party's position without giving up any information about their own position. So a buyer would say something like, so would you take 760,000 for this unit if I go unconditional? Now they might come back with 760,000 if they go unconditional, and this could be way lower than what you are asking for. But what you need to notice here is that if they say something like, would you take 760 for this unit if I go unconditional, they didn't offer you 760, and neither do we know if they can go unconditional. So they've just put out a hypothetical question, and you could use the same with when you are buying, where you could say, oh, would you take this if I go unconditional? That means you haven't offered that price, and neither have you told them that I'm going to go unconditional on this. And you'll face the same scenario when you're trying to sell your units. So always remember that. But what you need to do is come back with, I'll be happy to look at any offer that you present to me in writing. So what you want to do is get them to commit. And that offer, present the offer to me in writing. I never accept an offer verbally. The agents that we work with, we've given them instructions. Don't come back to us with an offer where you've got an email or you've got a verbal offer. If they want an offer, get them to sign the contract and come back with the contract. And that way they've committed, because if I sign the contract, that sale is done. So they've basically given us an offer, but all I have to do is sign the contract, and the date of sale is finalized the day I sign it, and that whatever their offer is, it's actually just become an unconditional offer because they've now signed the contract. So in writing, in most cases when I'm trying to sell my units, I'm trying to get them to put it on the contract. So defending against phone a friend, which is what we do as well, that I need to talk to my business partners, or I need to talk to my wife, or I need to talk to my other investors. So always remember, if they come back to you and say, look, my wife's the boss, she needs to make the decision, you have to ask them, when can you meet them? Or get the agent to get the wife and the husband or whoever is planning to buy your unit to be together, and then review it and not waste any more time with them. Defending against take it or leave it. And you'll always find that when you're trying to sell your units, you'll find statements like, this is the best I can do, I'm not sure what to do next. And the best way to handle the other party's take it or leave it offer is to just keep talking. Don't acknowledge the threat of walking away, and either keep negotiating or change the subject. If the other party doesn't actually start to walk away, you know that they are bluffing, and you are still willing to negotiate. So if they say that's my best offer and they don't start walking away from the deal, you know that you can negotiate more. Always ensure that your words and your actions are in agreement. For example, if you say that you are displeased with an offer, make sure your face and your body language replicate that displeasure. And when words and actions are out of sync, they will subconsciously register as a red flag with the other party. So if you don't like something, make sure your whole body looks like you didn't like it, or it shouldn't be that, you're jumping up and down on the inside and the outside is saying, you can do better. no matter how expert you are, unless you are an actor, it will actually go through to them. So, and they won't know what's happening, but they will pick it up. Defending against silence. So let's say you place an offer with a vendor, and then they don't come back to you, and 2 days or 3 days have gone by. You basically call up the agent and you say, here, I just thought I'll repeat my offer. This is my offer. And then you sit back quietly. You basically defend against silence with silence by just repeating your offer. So don't get excited, or don't show that that is why the only way you can genuinely do this is when you've got more than one, when you're negotiating more than one deals at a time, because you're not emotionally attached to any one of them. You are negotiating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you know this is going to work. Defending against lies, usually it doesn't happen, but from time to time you will find. I've seen that if you're a true genuine person, you'll find that universe will throw true genuine people towards you. And if you are if you're a shyster yourself, you will come across such people. It's the law. You attract the kind of person you are. And if you're genuine, you'll come across genuine people. And I kid you not, we come across a lot of genuine people, and that is why we consider ourselves blessed, because we always make sure that whoever's involved with us is happy and making money, even if they are our trades. So yeah. So early in the negotiation, casually make mention of the fact that you take your ethics seriously. And we do that, and we do that all the time, that we tell people that, this is our value system. We come together because we have the same value system. We are transparent. You can get a third party to come in and audit us anytime. All the receipts are available. All the invoices are available for any investor to audit us anytime. So it's not like we're doing anything chunky. It's not like we are trying to get kickbacks from trades or anybody else. There is never such dealing. And the reason for that is that if you ever got a kickback from a trade, and that trade for whatever reason made a mess, or basically in other words messed up on the job, you will never be able to genuinely get to them or genuinely penalize them because you made a deal with them. So always remember that these things are very short-sighted things. Never ever get into any of these, because you want to be in this thing for the long haul, not just for the short term. So if whenever you're dealing with somebody and you remind them that you're an ethical person, that's more than enough. The other person gets this indication that you're ethical. They've got to be ethical, and 99% of the time you'll find that most people are ethical. But there are a lot of people who have this mentality where they run their lives because in their mind they can only win if other party loses. And if that's the kind of person you come across, don't make a deal with them. Don't sell them anything. Don't buy anything from them. No deal. So simply reminding the other party that ethics is important and that you are thinking about it will diminish the likelihood that they will attempt to deceive you. And you can say something like, just to be transparent, I wanted to let you know that if I buy this site, blah, 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 all the things that you are planning to do with the site. So this is in the scenario where you might think that the landowner doesn't know what the zoning is. For example, you come across somebody where, because of your superior knowledge, the landowner doesn't know what the potential is, or you know something that they don't know. In most cases, and in most sites, you'll find that the landowners today are not stupid. No matter how old they are, they would have a family member who would know more. And these days, information, it rarely is the edge, so to speak. It's more your genuineness, and it's more your personality that comes into play when you're dealing with people, because everybody knows what their land is worth. I mean, they might not be able to figure out if they can put 50 apartments on it, but if the site lends itself to it, they may be able to. But in most cases, they would know that the site is good for 4 townhouses. And if they don't know, they go to an agent, and the agent will tell them, it's good for that. Hence, the value of this should be this. And usually, you'll find that they are in the right range. But if you think you're getting something, you should let them know, rather than trying to take these advantages. So now you could also get criticized, especially when the market, if you end up in a market which has a lot of other units available on the market, and the buyer says your unit isn't that good, or your appliances are not that great, and all you have to do is thank you, but it sounds like this isn't the right unit for you. And they usually do that because this is what I was saying in the last week's class, where everything wrong about the site, you talk it down to get to get a better price. The issue with the tree, the issue with the slope of the side, the issue with all different scenarios that can cause you to spend more on construction, or delay your development process, or whatever. So those are the things that you got to be careful of. So make sure that you, if somebody does the same thing to you when they're buying your units, you just say that, look, it sounds like it is not the right unit for you. So why don't you go on? Don't say anything else. Just say that it sounds like it's not the right unit for you. So always communicate respect, even if the other party doesn't earn it or deserve it. Defending against threats of competition, because when you're in the market and you're trying to sell your townhouses, you'll say, even the agent will come back to you and say, look up the road, they're selling these units for X amount, why don't you sell them for this? But if you've done your homework and if you've done everything right, you can stand your ground. So the best strategy in this situation is to try to determine, is the other party telling you the truth? And if so, what are the other offers you are competing against? What is their level of motivation to work with you? So which development are you talking about? So you can actually get back to them saying, if somebody says, oh, did you see that development up the road? They're selling their 3-bedroom units for $650 and you're asking $670. And you could say, oh, which developer are you talking about? Perhaps I know the developer. So if they are bluffing and they are interested, now they might be just saying this because they are interested in buying your unit, but they just don't want to give you that price. They just want to save extra 20K or whatever. So you could come back with, which one are you talking about? I might even know the developer. And the moment you say that, you'll find out whether or not they're telling you the truth, whether or not there is any layer of substance to it. So always remember. Now, this is the end of negotiation module. The last one is, it is always better. No deal is better than a bad deal. So don't make the deal with the devil. So, and this applies to even the investors that you want to work with. It could be, they might have the money, but they might be, they might not be the right people to work with. Or they might be the people who, they might be the kind of people who would always talk you down or do that. Now, I'll give you an example. There is somebody I know, they are a QS, and we've known them for many years. In fact, I've known them for 5 years, and before that, Sam's known them for many years before that as well. And they're very knowledgeable. Like, they're super knowledgeable, but they are so condescending every time they talk to us. It's like they're telling us all the time how stupid we are and how we don't know what we are doing. And they'll just keep saying that, and I locked horns with this person so many times that I've now drawn a line saying, I don't care how much knowledge this guy has, I just don't want to work with him anymore. Because, they might be really knowledgeable, they might be very good with what they do, but if they can't respect you for who you are or what you do, I don't want to deal with them. And always remember that. Just because someone has money doesn't mean that you have to be their slave. And I keep telling this to all my investors that we don't want to work for somebody, and we don't want anybody to work for us. We only work with people. So if all the people that we employ, or our trades and everything, we treat them as our own. With it's never like, oh, you work for me, or there's always respect there, and we want to be treated the same way. So we've now dealing with investors who have way more money than we have. They are worth over $10 million. They are in a different league, and we've told them very clearly, the moment we start feeling that you treat us like we are your servants or we work for you, that deal's not going to work. So unless we get that respect, we don't want to work with anybody. So always make sure that you do that. So if you do reject an offer or counter offer, sometimes it's easier to simply say that you lose money by accepting this deal. You can come back with, I appreciate that counter offer, but if I were to pay 1.5 million for this property, I'd end up losing money. And I'm not going to make it long in this business if I do projects that lose me money. So that's the end of the negotiation section. If you have any questions, I'd love to take some questions on. If you've got any questions. Otherwise, I think tomorrow we're gonna do. I was thinking of doing this today, but I think I might be able to do the design and product fit tonight, and then take up the consultants and obtaining permits section for tomorrow night, because we got to knock these three out this week, so you guys understand how the development brief works and how the planning permit and development approval works, consultants and everything. The design and product fit is more about the kind of development that you're going to do, how you come about it, and how you work them, all those things. So, yeah. Any questions, please press the hand button, and we can wrap up the negotiation module today. Hang on 1 second. Yes, Shane.
Yeah, Amber, just a question about a little bit of a back and forth in the negotiation process. From your experience, how important is having a predetermined price that you're prepared to pay, but also from your experience, how often do you find you have to go back and forth with price and other things before you're able to come up with a negotiation that works out
on a straightforward deal? Maybe a couple of times and it's done. Usually either they've agreed or we've walked away, or they've walked away and we haven't agreed. But within a couple of times, you make an offer, they come back with a counter, you make an offer, they come back with something, and usually by the time they come back with something, you've almost agreed to what they're saying. But in a longer negotiation, which I'm doing right now with these seven vendors, and we are actually doing these negotiation, and we have an agent in the middle. These sites are not on the market, they are not listed, but we've got the agent to knock on all the doors, and all of them have come to party verbally. Now we are trying to negotiate a price with all of them, a square meter rate, all those things. So we've already gone back and forth maybe 7 times now, and it's still going back and forth. We're still massaging the price, because it's 7 of them, and it takes time where by the time they come back to us. So yeah, so this is not something that'll happen overnight. So in this scenario, it could be longer. The more lucrative the deal would be to you as a developer, the longer you'll find the negotiation would take place, because that means they are coming to party and you want a longer settlement. You are trying to negotiate the terms. You're trying to give the concessions away, and these days it's very seldom that you come face to face with the vendor, because the moment the vendor thinks that they are talking to a developer directly, two things happen. First, either they think that you're trying to take them for a ride, or they think that you're trying to shaft them, it's a constant, it's an instant defense mechanism that comes up from them. So I actually don't mind negotiating with an agent in the middle. And when you got an agent in the middle, you got to have a very good rapport with the agent for that.
Do you, just on that point there, I think it would be natural that most vendors would be very wary of a site that they've been told is a development site. Do you have any other sort of counters and suggestions about how to make yourself seem ethical and reasonable? And because I would imagine for most people there'd be a huge amount of distrust when they know that their site is a potential development site.
I've seen if it's this is exactly what's happening. All these 7 vendors are together, like they've got adjoining blocks, and we're negotiating with all of them. So they want the moon. I mean, for a 600 square meter site, they want 2 million, and they think that they've got everything. So they've come back with their counter, and my counter with them is actually I'm going back to them with a detailed bullet point method of arriving at a price that I've arrived at, and clearly showing them how it's actually already above the market, and that what is the maximum that I'm willing to pay. So if that offer is presented to them in writing, they already know that they can go and do their research and do whatever. But at one point, because I've got the agent, I've got this thing where I'm getting the agent to talk to them and talk down the price as much as I can without being in the picture at all. So I don't know what they look like. I don't even know their names. It's the agent talking to them, and we supply everything to the agent with detailed analysis of how we've arrived to that price. So if they see that we put in the work of arriving at a price, they see that how it would work. What are the things with the site? So yeah, it's there's not a lot that you can do when an agent is there, but when an agent is not there, you can negotiate and offer something like, okay, you want a piece, what about I give you X amount for the land, and then I give you 10% of the profit that comes out. And most people will not agree to that, because the profits take, if I've got a 3-year option, the profit's going to take another 2 years after that. Who's going to wait for 5 years to get that profit? Most people want all the profit up front. So what I need to do is show them that if they don't take this deal, they might not be able to sell this at the price that they want individually. So yeah, there's not a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, so potential development site, if a vendor is being told by an agent or someone else, or that they realise they're a development site, you can negotiate, but then part of it would be perhaps educating the vendor to say, well, here's a development site, and here's how I arrived at my price, by presenting to them something in writing or some sort of business case as to why you've offered your price.
Yeah, but I won't give them my feasibility. I'll have to do my feasibility on my end, but I won't give them that feasibility.
Yeah.
They because one of the agent came back to us and said that one of them was pointing out at this townhouse that sold for 1 million, and hence he wants 2 million for the site. Well, I said Yeah, you want 2 million for the site, but someone's going to build it. Someone's got to do the full development and all of that. So we even if I have to knock up a feasibility with some ballpark numbers, which is about right, I can say that X amount I can pay for cost of construction for a townhouse or whatever, with the plans permit and everything, to show them that there is not a lot in there. Because if I can't make if I can only afford to give them that price if I can make that project work at that price. If it's not working for me, they're not going to get it. um, so you only push it to a point where you're making money. And if you find that they get greedy and they suddenly their 600 square meter site has jumped to a $2 million valuation, that means that they are being greedy. So they can sit on it, and it's going to take them 5 years to even get to that $2 million value.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, Ashley. Yes, Ashley.
Hi, Amber. Just wondering if you saw a site which has clearly been owned by people who look like they have been trying to develop the site, but they didn't develop it, and then they're reselling back onto the market. Would you factor in a risk premium on that site, like that maybe there's some hidden gremlin with that site that's not immediately apparent?
Absolutely. I would be very wary of the site, because especially if a developer who that was trying to develop it, there's got to be something hidden. There's something in the site. Now, in all fairness, it could be a reason where they haven't got the money to be able to take it any further. But if the site didn't, it depends upon whether or not it had a DA. If it didn't have a DA and they were trying to develop it, why did they get knocked back? I would want to jump on the council website and see what happened.
Yeah. So I'm looking at a site where the land was sold in 2015 to a group of 4 individuals. It's clearly a development site. There's townhouses over the road, but then they're putting it up for sale again in 2017. So it makes you wonder, did they do some basic work and then found some problems, or?
And they haven't got a DA on it?
There's no DA. If you search on the Brisbane City Council, there's nothing's been done formally. Yeah.
And
so
when
I was just wondering.
And when you search for it, nothing comes up.
Nothing comes up. No.
But then
there's nothing immediately apparent. It slopes down to the road. The trees are mostly on the border of the property. Yeah, it looks like a potential development site. It's zoned appropriately, etc. But they 4 guys, 4 unrelated people. So there's 2 different surnames in the mix. So to me, that smells of someone trying to do a development, but they're selling. But there's been no approval process in the Brisbane City Council.
And how long did they hold it for?
They bought in 2015, early 2015.
Well, it could be
selling now.
Yeah, it could be some investors, but if you want to do some due diligence on it, check with an architect and see what can you put on it. Is there any problems? Are there any issues with? Are there sites being developed right next to it or in the same area?
Yeah, I did a drive around today. So there's, I don't know if there's any current developments, but there's certainly been. Over the road, there's new townhouses, which was, I think, sold at the beginning of this year.
And there's no overland flow, or there's no other issue that's apparent about the site, the width or whatever?
No, there's a couple of trees, but the trees are on the perimeter mostly. There's a small one, sort of middle-ish. I don't know if that would be an issue. Anyway, yeah. So okay, you would need. So in that case, when you're worried that there's some gremlin, there's some reason why they haven't done it. So you would get a town planner or someone like that, or an architect town planner?
Yeah, town planner and an architect. How big is the site?
1,200 square meters.
Well, then I'll definitely involve the town planner and an architect. If you need somebody in Brisbane, I can send you the details for Troy. Troy is the architect who did.
I'll show you this information on the site. It's just because you asked to find, go out there and as part of your homework to find sites. So this is something I came across.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
No worries at all. Thanks, Ashley. Okay, Casey, I've got your hand up. Did you want to say something? Okay. We haven't got any more questions. I don't think anyone's put their hand up. Shane, did you put your hand up again, or is it the hand up from the previous question? Okay, hands down. Okay, so let's go into